were featured on Good Morning America, won several awards, and you have also had a lot of videos go viral.
My family and I were dealt a curveball. My mother was diagnosed as terminally ill. Upon me graduating, I chose to stay home, help take care of my mom. That put me on a kind of an alternate career path. I met a girl 10 years ago. The career question came up like, what do you do? And within about 2 weeks, I launched a wedding videography company. When you got to impress a girl, impress a girl. What I would tell a couple who's looking to hire a videographer right now, find work that you resonate with. I think you need to see solid work from somebody that you like before reaching out and assessing. At the end of the day, your last impression of them is going to be how good the video is and how much it resonates with you. I want to create a film that feels like a memory. Hey, we're having a wedding in 2 months because her father was ill. During her wedding, a dance between her mother and her father, they played the song Leaving on a Jet Plane. This husband and wife are dancing together potentially for the last time. We were a puddle on the floor. And to capture moments like that, I can't describe it. This is why I do what I do, because this type of moment is so incredibly special to this person and priceless.
Behind every beautiful wedding is a story worth preserving. Hi, I'm your host, Andrea, founder of the nation's premier bouquet preservation studio. Through building that company, I've had a front row seat to thousands of weddings and the incredible professionals behind them. On Bridal Club, I bring you conversations with the experts shaping today's weddings. It's for couples planning their perfect day and the pros who make it happen. Welcome to the club, to Bridal Club.
Welcome back to another episode of Bridal Club. Today, we have a very special guest, a filmmaker, somebody who I actually work with kind of indirectly, and somebody who's very passionate of his craftsmanship. Welcome, Daniel, to our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrea.
So you and I met on 11/11. It was our WIPA event.
Yeah.
And I had already followed you and I loved your work, but it was mesmerizing to see you work and then later see the actual, final product. And I was very curious to see how that would translate just because I saw you move. I saw you get people out of the way. That was me.
Yeah. Just one time. It was okay. You were doing your thing.
No, I loved it because again, I was really paying attention to that. And I was really intentionally looking at the final product and kind of seeing the whole experience where I was through your lens. And it was fascinating.
No, that was such a good experience. I mean, it's always, even behind the lens, sometimes I'm thinking, I'll get done with whether it's a wedding day or an event like the WIPA event, having captured everything and being in such kind of a rush. I mean, we're in, these sort of high intensity, very intentional live event situations. And, even myself as a service provider, being behind the lens the whole time, I'll end, a day being like, was there really a lot of good content? Did I really get everything that I wanted to get? Kind of have that self-doubt almost for a second. But no, getting back to the editing bay and seeing everything come together and creating everything, it always works out. And that particular event, I was proud of how that turned out. So
I love that you said that actually, because today specifically, one of my brides sent me a video of her doing an unboxing video on TikTok. And the whole thing is 4 minutes long. And it literally starts with, I hope I didn't regret doing this purchase. And I'm literally on the edge of my seat. I'm
on the spot. Yeah.
Yeah, because it went viral.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's incredible.
So anyways, I'm please love every single thing that you're opening. Please, please, please. And of course I went to the comments, I read all 500 comments or whatever, just to make sure that people were being positive and everything. It's the imposter syndrome is crazy. Even though you're a perfectionist, and your craft, there's always that self-doubt. And then you see the final product and you're this is why I do what I do.
Yeah. I don't know if this is true for you, but this is true for me right now, just going into kind of the imposter syndrome and kind of comparison a lot too. Yeah. Our feeds are so curated on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And so I'm constantly my Instagram feed is pretty much other wedding filmmakers. And so anytime I'm just trying to scroll or whatever, I'm constantly seeing what everybody else around the world is doing and kind of trying to not compare myself too much, but enough, you know what I mean? It's good to get inspiration. It's good to be pulled forward. So, sometimes it's good to have those reminders of a breath of fresh air. I did do a good job, and so, saying that you liked, what we did for WIPA and everything is greatly appreciated.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were featured on Good Morning America and you've won several awards and you have also had a lot of videos go viral. So, I mean, if that's the whole testimony of how your work is lovely for everybody who is watching it.
Yeah. I'm just, happy that people have responded positively to what I've put out, whether, something goes viral or winning a, AACWP award, which has been a huge honor. So yeah, I'm just grateful to everybody who's connected with any of the work that I've done.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk about your story and kind of like how you got started. When we were going back and forth, you were hesitant on this first question on how you started. And I'm just so glad that you are actually talking about this, because ultimately this is your why. This is how it all started.
Yeah.
And it truly is the fire that created where you are today. So take us back, and the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So, I've been kind of like dabbling with making videos forever. I went to school for it. And, when I graduated college, I was kind of just pursuing a career path, just like anybody else. You graduate college, you apply for jobs, and, try to climb the corporate ladder in one way, shape, or form. And, my family and I were dealt a curveball. My mother was diagnosed as terminally ill right upon me graduating, and so it's kind of at a crossroads. My parents and my dad in particular, they always said, do whatever you need to do whatever you want. But I chose to stay home with my family and help take care of my mom. And that put me a bit of, that put me on a kind of an alternate career path, right? I wasn't so much applying for jobs and looking for full-time employment anywhere. I was taking on like freelance work. So that would be freelance work on film sets or documentary crews or anything like that I could kind of like, schedule on my own time while also taking care of my mom. And so, I think that a lot of us, wedding professionals, right? We own our own business. We have a kind of a differing career path in one way, shape, or form. And that was mine. That's what got me, more working for myself than working for anybody else. And, as I look back on that decision, I'm of course so grateful that at the end of the day that career-wise that is that's what started to get me to where I am today. Kind of on a totally different note, what really launched me into owning a wedding videography company like I do today. I met a girl about 10 years ago, and she was climbing the career ladder. She had a job. She had accolades in that sense. She was in the private events industry as well. I didn't so much have a job, right? So like I said, I was freelance filmmaking and things like that on different sets. And so the career question came up, like, what do you do? And I think I like avoided the question at first. I was like, I'm like working on some sets here and there. But then within about 2 weeks, I had like put together some, edited some films together that I had shot, and I like launched a wedding videography company with an LLC and stuff like that. And so next time we had that conversation, I was like, I own a wedding videography company. Like that was, my answer. And it was Daniel K. Films. Yeah. So,
fake it until you make it, they say.
Say what?
Fake it until you make it, they say.
Fake it until you make it. And, when you got to impress a girl, right? So that's kind of what
awesome.
I did.
When was that? How many years ago?
That was almost 10 years ago. That was September of 2016.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. I love the story so much. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Again, the people that do hire you to do their weddings, they do care about your story. They care about like who is the person behind it. So I think that question was very important. So thank you again for including that.
Good. Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about your goal. You say that you like when people relive their feelings when they're watching your film, as opposed to just like a memory. What do you mean by that?
I want to create a film that feels like a memory. And I think that it can be so like subjective as to how to actually execute on that. But, when people watch their film back, I really want them to feel like they were there.
Yeah.
And I think that's something, unique that we as wedding filmmakers can deliver. It's one thing to just like see what happened in the form of pictures. And, of course, a great photographer is everything, right? We want to have great pictures and great capture of our wedding all the way around, but to also use images and sound to tell a story and kind of like transport you back in the sense of like how it felt to be there. That's what I
Yeah.
That's what I ultimately want
I
to give
love it.
people.
Would
Yeah.
you be able to describe your style? I know it's very cinematic, but you show a lot of emotions. How would you describe it?
I would describe it as like, that's such a great question. I mean, I think it blends documentary style and cinematic style. And there's a lot of buzzwords, right? With filmmaking, right? What's cinematic, what's documentary, and what is storytelling, and all of these things that people throw around. But I love to find a good song that I and the couple might find compelling, and just kind of like flow with that song. And use clips and sound bites, which is, moments of people speaking with that song, and kind of like create this dance as you're
Mm.
watching, right? Like the music's coming in and out. You're hitting different emotional cues, whether it's like a lull in the song where we might put, somebody's speech. And as the music comes to a crescendo, we put all the best shots of the wedding day, right? Little things like that is just my approach. So, yeah, I like to, I would say I have a cinematic documentary mix style where I just focus on authenticity more than
Yeah.
anything.
I love it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're gonna share your socials later so people can really look into everything that you've done. It's stunning, by the
Thank you
way.
so much.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And honestly, it comes with a lot of experience and a lot of passion. You definitely have an eye. I contacted you because, well, we met at WIPA. Again, I was following you before, but we met at WIPA, and I saw you kind of like do and take all the shots, and I just remember that vividly because I was paying attention, and then seeing the aftermath, right? And I was like, wow, this guy needs to be on the podcast,
Yes.
And that's and that's when I was like, hey, I think you need to be on the podcast. And then, as I mentioned earlier, like 11/11 was a big day for me because my husband and I launched our podcast that he's actually hosting, and we were editing on CapCut. I think I told you that this is the first time that we actually had like a nice setup, and I'm so glad that you're here for this.
Yes.
But before that though, we had an iPhone, So he really wanted the 3-camera setup.
Yeah.
And I've only done that for like 2-minute long videos, for my socials or whatever. His podcast episodes are about 2 hours long.
Right.
So I knew I was in trouble on the editing side, and I asked you like, hey, can you please just give me some insight? I swear I'll pay you, or we can do some sort of like collaboration or something, because I'm very desperate. It's taking me hours upon hours upon hours to edit these, and this is not what I want to do, truly.
Yeah.
So you and I jump on a 10-minute Zoom call, and you were so nice to show me what you were doing for a wedding. Thank you so much for doing that. It was a masterclass in 10 hours that I just cannot express how much time you saved me, because you're using Premiere to edit. I was using CapCut, and the 3-camera it was just not syncing. You gave me a masterclass, 10 minutes, step by step how to do it. And I was like mesmerized by that example. Though, you were literally editing a wedding that you did.
Yeah.
And I was just so mesmerized by how you were doing it. I mean, you were doing it live. You were doing like 1, 2, 3 because you had 3 cameras, or maybe 4.
Yeah, 4 in that one.
Oh my God. I mean, I think you were like anticipating what when somebody was talking, what the reactions of the other 2 people were going to say, because you kept changing the camera live. Just walk us through that.
Yeah, well, that's what I had taught you that I thought was particularly applicable to, multi-camera podcast editing. It's called, it's called multicam editing on Premiere. And so it really is, I mean, they probably have way bigger setups, but it's kind of what I imagine, live TV switchers doing. So, right. And so you talk about like anticipating what's going to happen next, that sort of art form and that craft is, like when I'm watching football, right, there's somebody I know in the background, like calling, they can see all the camera angles in front of them. They're calling out which one to take and which one to actually cut to. And so a very scaled down version of that is what I was showing you with editing a wedding ceremony. So in that case, there were, just to walk you through like what we would do technically in that situation is, we're capturing a ceremony. I probably have a microphone on the groom and on the bride and on the officiant. And then if there's live music, I'll probably throw, a microphone around there just so they can be, even more immersed, right, when they watch their ceremony film back. And then, what I showed you is, which you kind of know now, is essentially you stack the 3 images simultaneously on top of each other, and just at the touch of a button live as you're watching it, you just switch between each camera. So, as far as the anticipation, I mean, having filmed ceremonies before and kind of knowing which beats happen next and what people might say next definitely helps. Even now, it's by no means not the quickest process ever, but certainly, as you know, quicker than, CapCut and iPhones. So I'm really glad that you got something out of it, because during that time I was like, I didn't save her any time. This was probably really confusing.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no.
Oh my God. So I recorded the call, and I then went back and I literally wrote the steps, and I was, okay, this is what I do. You have no idea how helpful that was.
Wonderful.
But again, it really opened like a whole can of thoughts for me with videography, as in like, it is not just showing up with a camera. Like it truly involves so much before, during, and after from a videographer standpoint, that I don't think you don't see this on Instagram. And I feel like it should be talked more, like people should talk more about this. Like, again, the editing may come as second nature to you, and for other videographers watching, which I know we have a lot of vendors, it's not a big deal, right? But for people like me or your clients, we do want to know all the work behind the scenes that you put into by the way, your groom and bride had mics where I didn't even see them. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're asking these questions, because I think that it really is unique what we can give to couples. And I'm not just saying that just as me, but like, people who do what we do as filmmakers. It's really cool. And with technology and the gear that we have available to us changing constantly, we can just do more and more things. So what I'm starting to experiment with now, and starting to do moving forward, is what I showed you with editing a ceremony, right? Everybody's mic'd up, you can hear what people say. I'm starting to do that throughout the day. So like, one of the first things when the bride gets the dress on, we've got these little teeny tiny little microphones that literally stick like right inside the dress, and you can't see anything. I'll have her mic'd up from the moment she gets the dress on all the way through the end of the ceremony.
Wow.
So what does that mean? That means that we get to capture like all of the little side conversations that she doesn't think are being captured, because she's forgotten, in the groom, everybody's forgotten they're wearing a mic. And so, first look with dad, they hug and they have their moment, and he says she looks beautiful, and, we capture that. And then, they say like, okay, we're done. They forget that anyone's recording, and they have like maybe a more authentic conversation because they think the cameras are off, but they're not, right? That's my whole, like, maybe people, don't watch this before I film your wedding, right? Because, I don't want you to know that I'm recording everything. I'm kidding. But it's little things like that can add so much. It's like, it's subtle, but, to be able to really include a moment that like you really truly didn't know was getting captured, and then you like see it back as part of your film. I think that's like really huge to people.
Yes, because it's, entirely emotional and just real. Because it's not like, as you said, they just forgot about the mic, and they're just really having true moments.
Well, and it's hard to keep things really real on wedding day. I think a lot of people, talk about like maybe they're, whether photography or videography, I'm a documentary videographer or photographer. And so the emphasis, and a lot of people want this, the emphasis is like more candid moments and things like that. But when you're in the moment on wedding day and there just are cameras everywhere, right? It's probably like doing a podcast, right? Harder to act natural when there's, audio and video gear on you and stuff like that. So really being able to capture like actual, real, authentic moments is like, and it's not easy. And it's not a perfect, science either. I find myself like on wedding day feeling like, I was a little too involved in this moment. I don't think we got like real authenticity here. Let me step back. Kind of understanding that dance is really important.
I love it. Yeah. Since you talked about dance, I do want to talk about your collaborations with photographers and content creators, because since I'm on the board for WIPA, I am kind of like the contact for all those three people: videographer, content creator, and photographer. And it's been really cool to see how they're not being selfish, because honestly, like the first reaction would be like, this is what I do. I want it to be perfect. I don't care about the rest. Right. But you truly put your couples first aside and put aside everything else. And it shows, right? Because you really are collaborating with these people and dancing. It's kind of like a dance. Tell me more about what like kind of collaboration that looks like.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Photographers, videographers, and content creators now in more recent years, we are operationally, we're all filling the same space, right? We
Mm-hmm.
all are on our devices or pieces of gear, whatever that is, and we're capturing moments. So, you look at behind the scenes stuff and it's photographer, videographer, content creator, like standing in a line, like a wall of people, capturing what's going on with the couple. And I think it's really important to just like have a high level of awareness on wedding day as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to an agenda.
Mm.
It's good to go in knowing the general, the couple's vibe and like what
Sure.
they want, but like to
A
have
timeline too, I'm sure.
and a timeline
Yeah.
and being on board with the planner. Oh my gosh. I mean, like, behind the scenes conversations that we've had with planners are like, huge too. But just in each moment, understanding like when and why it's necessary to step in and then like, make the ask of the couple. Cause that's
Mm.
what we're doing, right? Photo video time, photographers making an ask of the couple to, do a certain pose. And then, for me to know, like I could go in and like, I could shoot side by side with the photographer and I could say nothing and I could just get
Mm-hmm.
what they get. Or I could step in after every single shot that the photographer does. I could be like, okay, now it's my turn, right?
Mm.
Or, and this is what I try to do is like I'll let the photographer often lead primarily. Like
Okay.
usually I'm not the one like driving the front of the train in,
Okay.
couple photo video session. Photographer is usually kind of driving. And I will come in whenever I see an opportunity to add some more motion to what the photographer did. I'll
Okay.
jump in, I'll whisper to them like, hey, when you're done with this shot, let me have them before you move them. And that way, I'm trying to allow a couple to still enjoy their wedding day and not take an
Yeah.
hour, hour long session away from their guests,
Right.
but still, giving something that is pretty and
Yeah.
beautiful. So yeah,
That's awesome.
that's the dance.
Yeah, that's the dance.
That's the dance.
So earlier we talked about curated Instagram accounts because
Mhm.
we all obviously put our best,
Yeah. Yeah.
products out there and work out there. For somebody who's planning a wedding right now
Mm.
and they're looking at all these videographers, I mean, there's a ton of super invested people and talented people out
Yeah.
there. I would say that is probably very hard just to choose one. If you were like, what would you tell a couple? Like, what should they be looking for when they're looking into hiring a videographer?
Okay. Yeah. So what I would tell a couple who's looking to hire a videographer right now, first of all, it's you nailed the issue. There's so many options now. I mean, I even remember, starting out, let alone like 5 years ago, I kind of felt like one of a handful of solid options in the DFW market. And that's not even just like, that's not trying to brag at all. I just think that a lot of people thought that videography was hard and there was like not a ton of solid service providers in videography in particular. Photography, tons of photographers.
Right.
There always have been. Videography, not so much. In recent years, there are a lot more filmmakers who all have a really unique style, and I'm loving the level of competition, but like there is just more to choose from. So, what I would say, okay, to answer your question, what I would say to a couple choosing a videographer, first just like find work that you resonate with.
Okay.
And I think some people think that they need to like meet with and talk to somebody and then see their work, and I actually think it's the reverse. I think you need to see solid work from somebody that you like before reaching out and assessing. Okay, so why is that? Like you could have a great conversation with somebody, you could like a videographer, and then maybe like watching their work is kind of a secondary thing you do, but like at the end of the day, like your last impression of them is going to be how good the video is,
Right.
and how much it resonates with you. So that should be first in your process, is to find something that resonates. And piggybacking off of that, I think you need to dig deeper than just what they post on social media.
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah. It's important. And like I'm posting clips on social media for marketing purposes. Every business owner, every filmmaker, is doing that. And that's good. That's okay to get a foot in the door. But I think couples should do two things. They should watch whatever like long form video content that filmmaker is going to end up delivering to them. They should watch examples of that. And then I think to take it even a step further, this is going to put a lot of people on the spot. I think that they should ask whatever filmmaker they talk to send them their most recent work too.
Yeah.
Because, I can post my favorite wedding film ever with just the perfect couple and like, the storybook weddings that like you can't mess up. You know what I mean? Because it
Yeah.
was just so spectacular. I can post that from 5 years ago, and that's like my only example that I show.
Right.
But like, can I perform consistently? Can I nail my most recent one? So
Yeah.
I think couples should start asking that.
Yeah.
And again, that's going to make some people be like, oh no, that puts me on the spot. But I think that's good for couples to really know what they're getting.
Yeah. You know, for flower preservation, I do something similar, right? It's like, yes, our Instagrams are curated. They're, of course, we're putting the best work. This is for everybody, not just, our industry. Look at Google reviews, go see what they're posting, like their clients are posting, because those are truly, I mean, obviously people are going to be inclined to either put a bad review or a good review. Look at that, right?
Right.
Talk to people, talk to others that, have used their services, because ultimately that is a testimony. So anyways, I love that answer. I think is genius not to just hire somebody, through the feed. That's like,
Yeah. Well, and two, like, you can, you might get a recommendation from your planner about your service provider. And that's great. That's awesome, right? Like, love planner recommendations, but you should evaluate the people on that list to also, even that small list that your planner gives you, you should still like peek behind the curtain and, meet with them or see the vibe of their films and everything like that.
Can you guide me through what it's like working with you as a couple? Do you talk to the couple before the wedding, or
Yeah,
what is like from start to finish? What does that look like?
that's a good question. I like to, like before the wedding,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
like
if
to,
somebody just just reaches out to you.
yeah. I like to be intentional. I love to talk to them, so ideally I'll have a couple or a planner reach out and we'll schedule an intro meeting. And, that's just that's just kind of for a vibe check, right? I'm assuming that
Yeah,
they have watched some work of mine and that they like it. And, we can talk about that, but, I want to get to know them on a little bit of a deeper level. I want to hear from their words what their vision for their wedding day is,
yeah,
because that's an important question. It's not, it might sound obvious, I want to wear a white dress and get married. Right. But, there's so much in between of like, if you really, drill down, like what kind of vibe they're looking for, what have they seen online that they resonate with or don't resonate with, whether it's, my work or theirs. Right. So, getting that understanding of them, is important, from the jump. And then, I'll meet with them beforehand to kind of like revisit that conversation, like closer to wedding day, talking more creative, talking about what kind of music they like and which moments, they're most concerned with that might not necessarily make it onto a timeline, right? Whether it's, this moment with my particular relative is really important to me because they're a big part of my story. Make sure you get shots of them, right? So digging a little bit deeper in that sense. And then when it comes to wedding day itself, I prefer to be a presence that, like, I'm not a really like over the top extrovert type of person at all, but like I like to be like a comforting presence on wedding day, in the sense that like people can feel like at ease and calm and more free to be themselves, as opposed to like I'm asking them to do a lot of stuff that's
right,
not
yeah,
them. I'd rather let them be them,
mm-hmm.
and then just capture that naturally happen as much as possible.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
about after wedding?
After wedding, well, I want to get them some content kind of soon. I know that everybody is anxiously waiting for their videos to come back, and that totally makes sense. And I'm always excited to make it. And then, um, when they're watching back whatever I deliver, I want them to be like ecstatic and over the moon at what they get, but also like pleasantly surprised.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, I think it's important to, capture things, all the big moments, right? Of course, we're capturing the big moments and we're giving the wow factor. We're pointing our camera at pretty things. But as I was alluding to before, the moments that they might not have realized were going on, I want them to see that and be like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing my wedding day from like this slightly different perspective than what I even remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want people to be overwhelmed with joy when they
I
see
love it.
things in
I
that
love
way.
it. My photographer was top notch, John Kane. I know
Yeah.
you know who he
Hmm.
is. And every single part of my interaction with him before the wedding, during the wedding, and after, like months and months, actually a year after, it was just over the top, like
Mm.
amazing. Well, I didn't actually have that experience with my videographer.
Mm.
I didn't have any type of conversation actually before. It was just an email. I didn't have mics on me. I'm like, oh my God, I do love my wedding film. I really do. Looking back, I'm like, that would have been so special because my husband and I definitely plan a lot of solo moments by ourselves. Like we would just go, by the lake, him and I, and looked at the stars just in the middle of the reception and stuff like that. And I kind of wish that we had mics then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most recent wedding that I did, I had a mic on the bride, and I don't always have time to like listen to every word that was said on them. But as I was editing and scrubbing through stuff, I did catch her and her dad, and I didn't have a video of it, but I think it's almost more special that I didn't. She was about to walk down the aisle, and like I just hear her and her dad like whispering to each other, and they were like so nervous. She was getting all the goosebumps, and she's like, do you want to take a shot? And they like took a tequila shot before going. And then but just to calm their nerves. But then they like launched into this quick little, like really beautiful conversation afterward. Dad got teary eyed and stuff like that. And it was, again, like it was important that they that they thought nobody was listening.
Right.
Because this is like real, let your hair down moments.
Yeah.
So anyway, I haven't delivered that one yet, but I'm going to find a way to just like deliver her that little soundbite
of my God, you must. I cannot wait to see that.
Yeah.
Speaking of favorite moments, is there one that you can actually think of that really just stuck with you?
Yeah. I mean, the most memorable moment that I have from any wedding that I've ever shot, was it was a couple named Lindsay and Jameson. That was back in 2022, and they contacted me and they said, "Hey, we're having a wedding in 2 months because her father was ill, and they didn't know how much time he would have left, and they had to bump plans up from their initial engagement." And so anyway, they booked me, and when we have this wedding, and I'm trying to you talk about microphones and everything, I'm like finding intentional ways to subtly like leave microphones on dad and capture little shots of him, just not invasive, but just talking to people, right? And so I think she later tells me this, or before wedding day, there's this story about him and his wife, right before the bride was even born. I believe that this the father of bride, he was deployed into the Air Force early on in their marriage, and one moment that him and his wife shared early on was that she dropped him off at the airport, and then on the car radio he turned on the song "Leaving on a Jet Plane" by John Denver, and which at the time, early on in his life, getting deployed into the Air Force, right, makes sense for that moment. But during her wedding, she had her father-daughter first dance, and then allowed a dance between her mother and her father, and they played the song "Leaving on a Jet Plane." And I've seen a lot of emotional moments. You film enough weddings and listen to speeches and ceremonies, and there's a lot of emotional moments, but the double meaning of that song at the time that this husband and wife are dancing together, and I don't know the full story, but potentially for the last time.
Wow.
To the song "Leaving on a Jet Plane," and just like the look on her face, especially as she held him so tight, had me and the other guy that I was shooting with and the photographers, we were a puddle on the floor. And
I can imagine.
To capture moments like that are just, I can't describe it. It gives you the feeling of like, this is why I do what I do, because this type of moment is so incredibly special to this person and priceless.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that story so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You and I are in a similar industry in a way. I mean, obviously in the wedding industry, but we do very different things. I do flower preservation. You obviously do filming, heirlooms, right? I mean, people must have them. Like they're possibly the most special day in their entire life, if not maybe top 3,
Right.
Yeah. So what does it feel like for you to be able to give this to a couple that is going to look back at their film like 10 years from now with their kids then, and yeah,
that's a great question. I it's one thing to deliver a film, and you feel the same way, delivering their heirloom soon after their wedding. There's the experience of, watching your film or getting your flowers shortly after your wedding day. And that's exciting. That's beautiful and that's fun. But it's almost like that's not an heirloom yet. Right.
Yeah, I
But
love
it
that.
will be.
Yeah.
And I think about the value of, whether I'm sitting down and editing the thousandth, speech that I've ever done at a wedding, maybe it feels a little bit monotonous. Maybe it sounds like other speeches that I've done before, but what I try to remind myself is like, okay, there's the value of this speech that I'm editing right now, but what about the value of this speech in 10 years
Wow.
when the couple is in a completely different stage of life, whether it's the speech or the film that they're watching back, completely different stage of life. Maybe they've got a kid, things are different, living in a new house. Okay, what about 20 years from now? What about 50 years from now? How much life, has changed since their wedding day? I think that's looking ahead. That's the heirloom value that we're giving.
Yeah.
We may never hear from those couples 50 years from now about how much our stuff meant to them, but it's, it's going to happen.
Right.
I think that's beautiful and that's motivating.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Daniel, thank you so much again for coming
Of
and
course.
for all your help. I mean, you were a lifesaver when you helped me a few months ago.
Glad I
How
can
can
help.
people find you, connect with you, and hire you for their wedding?
They can find me on Instagram at Daniel K Films. They can go to my website and get a little bit more of a sneak peek about me and who I am. I am doing a rebrand here in just a second, which is underway. So in about a month from now, they'll be able to see even more from me in that sense. But yeah, I encourage people to just drop me a line and reach out and let's talk.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.